in the previous video, I would guess you were probably under the impression that, according to our discussion, we are leaning towards the Republicans' point that, we should not have the minimum wage, okay, because it eliminates the jobs. But actually, we have not yet finished our discussion about minimum wage. Okay, even here, when we're about to wrap up this chapter 6, we have not yet finished our discussion about minimum wage. Later, if you're taking principles of macroeconomics, in chapter 11, when we talk about the cost of living or inflation, we're going to come back and re-look at the minimum wage. You're going to probably see a quite different discussion over there. Okay? The most important point we want to get across in the previous video is no matter what you want to do, okay, you want to eliminate the minimum wage, or you want to keep the minimum wage, or how far you want to raise or lower the minimum wage, all of these decisions should based upon the rigorous economic calculation and analysis. Okay, because this policy is so important, it affects millions of people across the country. We cannot just say, we come up with a number that's pretty easy for people to remember. Okay, there got to be more, evidence that we can come up to support our policy decision. Okay. All right. Here let's draw a quick conclusions of this chapter. Okay. So here we already point out the problems. Okay. Even the government oftentimes would say, we're doing these price controls to help the poor. We find that in many cases they're not really helping the poor. They're just making the poor poorer. Okay. So what should a government do? Okay. Now I'm going to give you some reading essays. I will post them on Moodle page, okay, for you to check out. And but generally speaking, an economist would prefer the income subsidy over price controls, okay, because we believe the price is a very important thing on the market. Okay, if you remember what we did in chapter 4. That three-step analysis. The first step talks about one side of the market. The third step talks about the other side, right? Actually, the most important thing in that analysis is the second step, because the second step connects the two sides of the market, right? The second step is about the price. Okay, so price goes ups and downs to make sure the market can reach the equilibrium, okay, can eliminate surplus and shortage. However, if a government controls the price, we're going to lose all of these. Okay, we won't be able to see, which way the market is moving. Okay, if we see a shortage or surplus, are they getting bigger or smaller? Right, we lose all of this useful information for the buyers and sellers to make any judgment. Okay, so that's why we believe that the price should be free on the market. If we do want to help the poor, we could subsidize their income. Okay, so you can base upon their work status. Okay, if they're working but they get paid, for example, $5 per hour, but you believe they should be able to make $8 per hour, so the government can subsidize their income by $3 per hour. Okay, the income subsidy can be done without any artificial intervention on the market. Okay, so here we see the first case of the public policy, which is economically stupid but politically smart. Okay, so we find that at least in this chapter, the minimum wage law does not make much economic sense, right? But it does make political sense, because if you want to do income subsidies, the government has to come up with the fiscal resources to subsidize, right? But if you just do the minimum wage law, you can just simply pass the law, okay? You don't have to pay even 1 penny towards that. So that's why we said this is economically stupid and politically smart. Later, we're going to give you more cases with the different public policies. Okay, you would find that, because these policies are determined by politicians. Okay, so oftentimes they do not make much economic sense. Now, this reminds us of what we already mentioned in chapter 1, the invisible hand, okay, advocated by Adam Smith and the laissez-faire. Invisible hand, in chapter 1, strictly speaking, it's the whole, the market mechanism. Okay? But simply speaking, you could say this is just the price. Okay, the price, as we said, goes ups and downs to make sure the market is clear. Okay, so we got to make make every effort to be sure the price is free to move. Okay, instead of being controlled. Laissez-faire means the smaller the government, the better the market, or the more efficient the market. Okay? So oftentimes that the government promised to do something on the market, it will just make the situation even worse. That's why many Republicans believe that oftentimes the government is not going to be the solution. Instead, the government is the problem itself, or at least the part of the problem. Okay? And But we don't want to give you the wrong impression that the market is always good. It's always the best. Okay? Of course, under some circumstances, the market could fail and the government intervention is necessary. Okay? So here, there are some quick examples. Okay? Like healthcare, like public schools, interstate highways, pollutions. Okay, for these cases, you would find that, for example, the property right is not clearly defined. Okay, so who owns the interstate highway? Who gets the return from that, right? Or the pollution, who owns the air? Who owns the river? Okay, so when the property right is not clearly defined, you would find that, for example, the firms, it's easier or rational for them to dump the pollutants into the water or air, right? Or if you look at the interstate highways or any other infrastructures, the the time it requires to get the investment back, it's probably going to be decades. Okay, but for most private businesses, they won't even survive through the whole period. Okay, they don't even know after 5 years if they're still stay on business or go under. Right, so they're less likely to invest in infrastructure. They're less likely to invest in public schools. Again, because of no profitability or a pretty long um, um, period of time, okay, to get your money back. So under these circumstances, we believe that the government should do something on the market. Okay, if you're taking principles of microeconomics, you should be able to get more chances to check out these cases. Okay. If you're taking macroeconomics, then you probably have to wait till you take micro or intermediate level micro to be able to have a deeper understanding of these cases. All right, so here we already wrap up our discussion about chapter 6.